Okay, so now we have come to our session with our students here, our full-time Silver Scholar students last year of the program. And so versus me telling who you are, why don't we go around the Zoom room here and have you introduce yourself, tell us your name, where did you study during your undergraduate time, what was your major? And then also include how many years did you spend out during your gap internship period and what were you doing? So our audience can understand and get to know you a little bit more. So let's start with Dalia. Can we start with you, Dalia?
Yeah, happy to kick things off. My name is Dalia Hammouri. I did my undergraduate at the University of California, Irvine in biomedical engineering. So a bit niche before generalizing through the MBA. I spent 3 years away, like a couple of people here. We all started, well, a few of us, except for Balajee, started during the same year. So took 3 years off. I did a few things. At first, I started off in market research and development and business, kind of like development for 2 different startups for a short stint of time before I spent 2.5 years doing product management at a medical technology company.
Great, thank you. All right, let's go to Alex.
Sure. My name's Alex Shook. I studied at Wellesley College in economics and sociology, graduated in 2020. I was at Yale during COVID with Kalen and Dalia, and that was an experience. And then I spent 3 years at Wizards of the Coast, which is the company that makes Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, working on their video game team, doing market and consumer insights. So returned and excited to talk to you guys today.
Thank you. All right, Kalen.
Hey everyone, my name is Kalen Beacham. Dalia and Alex mentioned we were in the same class here at the School of Management, but prior to that, I was here at Yale University, graduated with a degree in computing the arts, so very much focused on virtual reality development and computer graphics. And in the gap year, I spent 3 years at Microsoft, working for the creative designer team. So my focus is site UX, AI, accessibility, content management systems. And yeah, now I'm back. And thank you very much for having us again, Moonie.
Thank you, Kellen, for being here again. All right. I think we have Balajee. You're up next.
Hey everyone. I'm Balajee. I'm from India, Chennai. Did my undergrad in electrical engineering. Did it from India as well with Pilani in Goa, if you've heard of the place. And after my undergrad, or rather in my senior year, I worked with Texas Instruments. I was a chip designer for them, and then moved on to product management. So I didn't actually come here directly from undergrad, took a year off, worked in EdTech product management for a year, came to SOM in 2022. So as they pointed out, I was not in their year. And I took a year off as an international student. I could take a year off. I took that. Spent that time working with multiple startups, early stage, doing contract work, doing a whole bunch of things. Spent some time with the Connecticut State's venture capital arm, Connecticut Innovations, and then I spent my summer at Adobe doing product marketing and strategy. So a bit of a story there, but back now having fun with all these fun folks.
Well, thank you for everyone's introduction. As you can see, you can be out for more than 1 year, but Balajee has returned to us, even landing some varied internships between the periods. So thank you, everyone, for your introduction. So I want to talk a little bit more about the thought process. I know we have many participants within the webinar today. Our audience are probably still in college, perhaps maybe junior year or more so in their senior year, ready to apply. And they've joined today's session. I talked a little bit about Silver Scholars program is unique in the fact that you are joining right out of undergrad with no full-time work experience. So there will be a full-time work experience built into the structure of the program, but that occurs in that middle period of the structure, okay? So talk to us, each of you. our panelists today about your thought process and decision to apply to the Silver Scholars Program in your senior year of college. Like, how did that come about, specifically related to your pre-MBA background and experiences? And how did that impact your decision to pursue an MBA, particularly to start off in the Silver Scholars Program? Let's go back to Dalia.
Happy to kick it off. So like I mentioned, I studied engineering in my undergrad. I think it was something where I really enjoyed engineering in theory. If anyone is familiar with the biomedical engineering or medical device space, I had internships at a variety of companies, like both small and large, the largest of which was Medtronic, where I was doing engineering specific internships. And what I learned through those internship experiences was that it wasn't the level of interaction and cross-functional engagement that I wanted or that I thought was more suited for my personality. So kind of immediately after my junior year summer, I had finished up that internship at Medtronic, and I went back to the drawing board and was thinking about how I wanted to approach my post-grad phase of life. Graduation was coming up quickly. So I did a lot of research to try and understand what it was exactly that I wanted to do. And I kind of came across the concept of just being more higher level management. At the time, I was contemplating engineering management, obviously given the specifics of my degree, but it really just came down to knowing that in my personality, I didn't feel that I fit the engineering form and function in particular. So I actually applied in round 3 of 2020. So COVID was already, had come through swinging, and things were the way that they were. And I felt like it was just like a very uncoordinated time. So I took advantage of the opportunity and I applied, and happy to be back here now.
Great. Thank you for that. Alex.
Sure. So during my undergrad and slightly before, I had actually started a nonprofit in Las Vegas to help children with autism. It's a friendship matching service essentially. And when I was deciding what I wanted to do, I'd mostly done academic research. My internships in college were in social science research, and I realized I did not like academia, and I wanted to move into the professional world. And ideally, I wanted to get some kind of background that could maybe help me build that nonprofit. So when I found Yale, I was really interested in their business and society aspect. I applied for their Silver Scholars Program. I was actually deciding between Silver Scholars and a 1-year master's in management, and decided to do the full Monty of an MBA instead. And it was a great time. I really enjoyed it. We ended up transferring the nonprofit to a larger organization in Las Vegas, so I'm not growing it anymore, but decided to pivot and got an internship and then converted to a full-time job that I don't think I would have gotten without Yale.
Great. All right, Kalen.
As for me, as I mentioned in my introduction, my background was very much founded in technology and arts. And for me, kind of exploring that professionally as an undergraduate, I worked at JPMorgan Chase for a couple of summers and was a data analyst, and the second time as a software engineer. And I found those to be very rewarding experiences. But I think as I was kind of going through the internship, I realized I just really enjoyed getting to work with different people, talking to stakeholders, and I wanted to do something bigger than just implementing a solution or implementing products for people, but I wanted to kind of lead on vision. And that kind of what inspired me to want to pivot to product management, people management. And I felt the MBA was a great pivotal point to make that change. Now, simply why the Silver Scholars Program, I think what was really invaluable about that was the opportunity to kind of meet people who were well invested in their careers already, and to kind of learn from them in that first year, and then to kind of also make that pivot through a gap year. Which kind of gives you that exploratory room. And for me, that was, and I failed to mention my introduction, but my time at Microsoft was product management in particular. And then to come back the second year was a really invaluable experience or prospect to me. And so, yeah, I applied second round, because at that point I felt I was most ready and prepared for it. And yeah, ever since then, it's been really just a great blessing to be part of the program and to be amongst such a great peers. So yeah, that was my journey.
Balajee.
Yeah. So again, I think similar stories all around. did my undergrad in electrical engineering. I fully thought I was going to go get a PhD in electronics, and then COVID hit. So that sort of gave me more time to reflect on things. And it was actually a freshman when I was in junior year who even told me about these 2+2 programs. Then I found Yale through that. Didn't know it existed, had no business background. I had leadership experiences, but not business internships or like anything of that sort, right? So for me, it was about, do I think I'll get an MBA at some point in my life? The answer was yes, because I'm very extroverted and I like leading teams. So I thought I would go in that direction at some point. And it was really, I put in an application in round 3, much like Dalia, just because I didn't want to lose that opportunity. And I'm so glad I did, looking back at it. But yeah, that's what I did. And I took the time, I took a year to think it through. I almost I got into a master's in electrical engineering in Atlanta at Georgia Tech and Yale, and took a year just to decide which one I wanted to do. But I'm glad I'm here today.
Well, we're glad that you made that choice as well, Balajee. So I'm gonna just roll back a little bit and, particularly those who have been out for 3 years, but this question is going to be directed towards you, Dalia. Think back to when you first joined SOM, and I had talked about the structure of the program where our students are taking the first year in our innovative integrated core curriculum, right? So think about that time as a first year, as you've gone through the core curriculum already. What was it about the core curriculum? Were there any portions about that that prepared you for your extended internship?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say about the core curriculum is, again, coming from a more research-oriented engineering background, I didn't really have it a requirement in my undergraduate studies to do any sort of economics, finance, accounting, etc., like business core concepts. I didn't do any of that in my undergrad. I was very engineering focused besides my extracurriculars. So this was a great opportunity for me in the first year to build a foundation conceptually of the concepts that I would need in order to be applicable on a wider scale as compared to within, the engineering focus and process and design thinking that I was used to and trained to think through. So for me, a couple of the classes that I think definitely made a difference in the way that I functioned would be, unfortunately for me, because I didn't enjoy it, but it was helpful, was basics of accounting. I had to use that a lot during my my initial role when I joined as a product manager, doing a lot of modeling as well. There was like modeling managerial decisions. It wasn't necessarily that I used the specifics of that course in what I did, but it was a good foundational basis for me to understand how to do that as a skill. Courses that I really enjoyed were customer and competitor. Those two actually kind of targeted me towards knowing that I really wanted to go into like business strategy and or marketing because of my interest in the courses. But I would definitely say that, again, coming from engineering, I didn't have exposure to a lot of these concepts from the get-go, so it was really helpful.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So the next questions are related to more of coming back to the Yale SM community from your internship periods. And this question is directed towards Kalen. For those of you who don't know, Kalen is a seasoned panelist on our Silver Scholars panel. He participated last year. And he was still out in Microsoft, so we had Kalen's perspective during his gap internship period. So now we're closing the loop. You're back in the community, Kalen. And so now you've returned from that gap internship period. So I wanted you to share a little bit about your experiences thus far in terms of community engagement. Like, are there any clubs that you've participated in? Any electives here at Yale SM in particular that you are taking or will take that you're excited about? And related to student participation, are there any conferences or speaking events that you've participated in that have been quite enlightening for you thus far that you wanted to share to our audience.
Um, the one full circle moment, in fact, was, I think for me, my first MBA program, what was really foundational to experience was my participation in the technology club. And just kind of give more context to that, those are one of the professional clubs that kind of help prepare students for the specific industry they're interested in, going for it in that gap year or internship, depending on the student. And coming full circle, one that's kind of been my biggest commitment coming back was now I serve as one of the tech club leaders to focus on preparing students through casing for product management in particular. So it's been a really rewarding experience to give back in that capacity. Aside from that, I'm involved in the Christian Fellowship as well as the Black Business Alliance. And as far as some interesting classes, I think for me, what I wanted to be intentional about this semester was kind of exploring interests outside of product management. So I've kind of cast a pretty broad array of kind of topics for like the classes I wanted to take. So for instance, I'm taking one at the School of Environment, which is energy systems analysis. So very much focused on the energy transition and how do businesses make that move in the context of today's barriers. Another interesting one I'm doing right now is stakeholders managing capitalism. So that's more of a case-based one, but each class we're meeting with the CEO from a prominent company and learning just kind of pretty much their takes and perspectives on capitalism, which has been really, really incredible so far. And it's only a half semester one. I do wish it could be longer, but it's been great so far. Aside from that, next semester, actually, and this is an opportunity that, is possible for Silver Scholars too, is that I'll be studying abroad for the full semester at one of our exchange schools in Barcelona. So I'll be there. I think I'll probably focus more on coursework on like people management, entrepreneurship, things I want to kind of grow more on as I re-enter the workforce. But yeah, and that's kind of been this semester, kind of preparing for that in a sense, and then also going through my own kind of preparation for interviews and job applications for the next semester. So yeah, it's been great being back.
Well, it's great to have your full circle perspective, working at Microsoft. I think you also mentioned that you were thinking of when you were returning, doing a semester abroad in Barcelona. So I guess you've taken your word and run with that. So it looks like you're actually going to do that. So wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Kalen. So again, question related to reintegration with the Yale SM community, coming back from a professional environment. Alex, this question is towards you. 3 years you spent at Wizards of the Coast, coming back now to an academic environment, having to reintegrate yourself with the rest of the community. And by the way, I mean, there are your fellow panelists here, I think some of you have started the year together, right, in 2020. But you're also coming into a community now where they're completely different students you're integrating with. So I wanted you to talk about to the audience, what's been some of the challenges? And I guess on the flip side, maybe some highlights, if there are any, of reintegrating back into the community,
Sure.
into a newer community that you didn't start with.
Yeah, of course. I think it's whenever you're making the decision to get an MBA, it's a big one, and you want to look at it and evaluate if it's the right course for you, and if it fits your career projections. And so, of course, all of the traditional MBA problems we experience. It's difficult coursework. You're doing a lot of case studies. It's very social. You spend a lot of time with people, so be ready to be an extrovert for a year or two. In the first year, there was a lot of duck under the water. You really are running. You have to drive yourself as a sort of a non-traditional MBA. But once you get past that and into the second year, you have a more traditional background. You're there for 3 years. You're the age of a lot of your cohorts. So socially, it's a little bit easier getting back in, but it's definitely a lot more work, right? So you're coming into this group that have already known each other. They did a year's worth of classes with 200 people, 80 people, and then their small learning groups. They know each other really well. They have their social integrations, and coming back into the program can be a little daunting because you're trying to remember how to be a student after time away, and B, trying to integrate yourself socially. So it's not impossible. It just requires a lot more direction in how you choose to go about. So for example, I've decided that the easiest way to do that, I joined a lot more social groups than I did the first year. I'm in the wine class. I'm in a lot of small learning teams, like casework teams and such. And I actually changed where I was living so that I could be a little bit more in the heart of East Rock. And then the only other thing that I would say is something to consider is that an MBA is not every industry recognizes the benefit of it. And that was something unique to me, is going back into video games and media entertainment. It requires a lot of coffee chats with different people, and the network that you're engaged with is not as directly Yale. So there's a lot of energy in regards to that. But overall, it's not impossible barriers, but it's something to consider as you're making the choice.
Any, I say, surprises that you thought would be significantly challenging that you've come across for yourself, Alex?
I think in the first year especially, it's a professional degree, so not having the work experience sometimes makes it that you have it makes it more difficult to understand some of the cases that they're talking about. They're asking you to think about a time in your work life that is just fundamentally different from school. So it requires more engagement in that regard to understand the business aspect. And then the only other thing that was really shocking in the second year was how, I did not realize it at the time, directly coming from school, but now that I've been in business, the stamina requirement of school compared to a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 7, whatever your job might end up being, is different. And having to get back into the swing of homework and being a student it has been a little bit more challenging than I was anticipating it.
Thank you for sharing your insight on that. So we're going to turn a little bit more towards the life cycle of professional aspirations. And I'm going to direct this question towards you, Balajee, because you're one of our panelists today who's done more than one internship, right? But you've done it in such a condensed time, that 1 year structured gap. So you decided to stick to the structure. I'm going to stay out for 1 year, but I'm going to do all these internships. So along the way, you had professional career aspirations, pre-MBA, also during the time where you dipped your toes a little bit into varied internship experiences. Can you talk to us about your professional aspirations from sort of the cycle from beginning, when you came to SOM as a first year, how you spent it throughout your internship period? So along those touch points, talk us through your professional aspirations. Have they changed, I guess, since you applied to the Silver Scholars Program?
Got it. Thanks. It's also going to be a loaded answer. So I apologize in advance. So I started off, like I said, I was still fully an electrical engineer. I had no business background when I applied. And what I wrote in my essays was I want to be in a tech firm, either doing strategy for the semiconductor industry, or I want to be in tech product management. And like I said, the year I took off before I joined the MBA and after my undergrad, I used that time as well to experiment and see if tech product management is something that I want to do. And that helped. It helped answer some of my initial questions. I knew that I enjoyed being a product manager. So coming into the MBA, that gave me a little more clarity and focus, which prospective students, when you come in, foremost real consulting applications come first. You will be tempted to put in the MBB applications, and I think just having that extra clarity coming in helped. So that's the first part. The other thing I wanted to say was about the first part itself is I came in thinking I want to do more brand management and work in the CPG space, which is tough as an international student because sponsorship is not common in those areas, right? So that's also another thing to keep in mind. When you're an international student, tech is much more easier. So I just I knew I liked that space anyway, so focus more of my energy there. And then regarding the year that I took away, which you, like you say, is more structured, and then what I thought was the most common until I met all of these wonderful people here who had taken multiple years off. As an international student, you get to stay only a year in the US, so there wasn't much of a choice for me in that regard. Although I did try to go to Berlin, which didn't materialize, in which case I would have taken a couple more years off, right? But the goals for the year were very clear, and I stuck to them, which was I wanted to do my own rotation program, and that just meant a lot more job hunting. So I got to try product management again in the US. So that was like accounting for the cultural differences of working in a different country. I tried operations, which is a completely new role, which is fun. I did sales for 1 month. It's a very good experience to have, not one that I wanted to continue. And then I wanted to also experience big tech in a business role, which is how I ended up in Adobe over the summer, right? And I guess the bonus that I got was also the VC internship, which was all about, and this is one of the cool stories about New Haven. You know, they say it's a college town, but being here uniquely positioned me to be a part of the Connecticut State's VC arm because they're headquartered here. And they manage about $500 million in assets, right? Like, what an opportunity that I got simply by being here. So yeah, that's sort of the trajectory, and in the goal the entire time was to just test different career paths, see which one I like the most, and I'm recruiting for tech product again. So the answer is it hasn't changed, but I gave it enough opportunity to change, and just didn't.
Yeah. So you brought up something which I would like to remind, maybe just raise to our audience today, that actually, you know, it's not common. I'd say it's more standard for many of our Silver Scholar students to stick to the 1-year gap. Actually staying out longer is not common, by the way, and there is a petition process involved. So it's not like it's something that's automatic that we provide our students. So the standard structure is that 1-year gap for you to pursue one or more internship roles at one company or more than one company. So just wanted to kind of raise that out to the group, okay? So there is a petition process for those interested in staying out longer. And so there is a process, and you'll need to be approved for that, okay? Okay, so we're going to turn the conversation a little bit more. I think many folks are interested in recruiting, making sure you're getting those positions. You know, this is part of the why an MBA, part of the reason for many folks. So I want to turn this conversation towards, I guess, Dalia. Can you talk a little bit about the Career Development Office here? So I mentioned in my presentation that you'll have the support of our Career Development Office. Can you talk about your experiences thus far with the CDO? What type of services have they offered you, specifically as a Silver Scholar student, and which resources within the office did you find to be the most helpful? And also, have you leaned into accessing any touch points with our alumni network yet while you were pursuing your internships and now pursuing a permanent position once you graduate?
Yeah, if I can preface my answer with a point that I think is really important to make. Alex touched on this point briefly. I think it's really important to keep in mind your goals can change when you show up and go through your first year at SOM. If that is something that, you know, you feel compelled by an experience you have, a course you take, something you were exposed to that you didn't have exposure to prior. But at the same time, I do think it's really important to have a level of fervor and dedication to going through this process, because the reality is it is competitive for a reason. Once you get into the program, Yale does not like hand you your future job on a silver platter. You have to go out and find it. So with that in mind, a couple things I can say about the CDO. The CDO has a handful of career development coaches. And the great thing about that is you have an opportunity to, when you first arrive here, which again, you have to take it upon yourself to do so, set up meetings with a variety of coaches based on their past backgrounds, their experiences, what industries they are most familiar with. And you can kind of build a little bit of a friendship with different coaches that you think will be able to help you develop the skill sets that you're interested in based on the career path you want to pursue. So for me, I actually did connect with one of the career development coaches. Her name is Natalie. She was during our first year specific to the Silver Scholars program. So I was able to work through the struggles of a competitive job environment with the word MBA on my resume, but no MBA full experience, being a little bit of like a situation to figure out how to manage that toss up. She was really helpful, and we stayed in touch actually during all 3 years of my gap. So she was someone that I would email, would have meetings with regularly. Just because you're not an active student doesn't mean you can't continue to meet with the CDO, which is why it is a great resource. But again, you have to build those connections and put in the work. It will not be done for you. So I think it's great because now they have the new SOM Connect feature that is newly released this year, but it's a great way to be aware of where alumni are, have access to their contact information. Even prior to that, they have like a who went where sheet where you can see where previous alum have landed internships if they're still current students or where they are employed at the moment. It's a great way, again, if you have a specific goal in mind with where you want to take your career, to at least try to reach out to people and network based on your interests.
Great, thank you so much. I want to just take maybe 1 or 2 questions that we didn't tackle yet from the pre-submitted questions, but also there's some questions coming in live from our audience. You see this one coming in. Is there an advantage to applying to the Silver Scholars program in round 2 versus round 3? I could probably the best here to answer that for you, and that is there is not. We allot seats to every round, and Silver Scholar students in particular, we don't have a maximum cap that we need to admit into a class. Traditionally, it's usually been around, I think 5% of the class makeup is of Silver Scholar students. We've even gone up to 10% at one point during COVID time. So the percentages can vary, but it's certainly a smaller percentage compared to the MBA broader class for Silver Scholar students. So it doesn't matter which round you apply, round 2 or round 3. And then I'm going to go back to global studies. I know, Kalen, you mentioned that you are going to do study abroad. You're actually going to take the semester one, which tends to be our least popular, because I think you said last time too that there are disadvantages to that, right? You going abroad and you're going to be, that's a lot of time away from our community, but you decided to choose that path. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to do that? Because I know you were on the fence before, but by the way, there are many offerings of the global studies requirement, okay? Our students have to fulfill a certain number of credits to graduate, and so we offer various ways to do that. One of them is the semester abroad. So can you talk a little bit about your thought process in that, Kalen?
Absolutely. So I think for me, it was always motivated to want to study abroad, just given I haven't spent much time abroad. I think prior to going to Barcelona, I've only really been to Japan. So for me, it was this natural desire to want to study abroad. But beyond that, kind of thinking about the thought process that went into it, as you said, Moonie, it certainly is a time investment, and you are taking away 1 full semester from the 4 semesters you would typically have at the Yale School Management. But I think for me, and perhaps I think this is being a Silver Scholar, given that we have that 1 year to kind of build those foster initial relationships, I think, and then we're the first year, and then you kind of take off a gap period. I think for me, I felt comfortable with the notion of being abroad for my 2nd year, just given that I would be arriving back to a mostly new community. And it's not to say the relationships I have built this first semester aren't awesome. They've been amazing. But I think that's what kind of allowed me to feel comfortable and wanting to go for it. where you can do study abroad for just a week, and that satisfies the global studies requirement, or you can do 10 days. So there are smaller increments, but as you mentioned, Moonie, it is the least common method, just given that it's a pretty large investment of time. And then for me, why specifically Barcelona, I was really interested, given that I've studied Spanish like when I was in high school and a little bit through college. I felt it was be the kind of perfect application to be able to practice Spanish at a community where I would be forced to kind of speak the language, but also to kind of explore what professional life is like outside the United States, because haven't fully contemplated necessarily moving to the United States like for work. I think maybe the short term I would still want to remain here. But being in Barcelona for the opportunity to also explore neighboring countries and also to build a new network there that's international. And so for me, though, I think the benefits and just kind of the prospects of being able to explore just kind of won it over for me, as opposed to spending one additional semester here, I think. And yeah, that was my thinking process.
Thank you for sharing. We have a couple minutes left, so I want to throw out one last question to the group. And I think some questions related to what I'm going to ask you have been coming through the chat. So I think this kind of rounds out our session nicely. And so each of you, could you just share about, I guess, a gold nugget, solid advice out to our group here? What advice do you have for our candidates preparing to apply to the Silver Scholars Program at Yale SOM? What do you wish you had known when you were applying? Alex, let's start with you.
Sure. I have two things. One of them is just really do some soul searching and determine if it's the right program for you. And if your career aligns well with an MBA. Not every career does. And it can be a real Kickstarter, but it's also time out of work. And then the only other thing I would say is recruitment starts really earlier than you expect, earlier than it does in college. For some industries, it starts before your first year, like in August. So knowing kind of what you want to recruit for and why is going to give you a leg up. You don't have as much time to do the thought process and the thinking in the early semester as you might anticipate having. So just be ready to kind of run from the get-go.
Great advice. All right, Balajee, let's go to you.
Apply. That's my advice. Don't procrastinate. Apply. Yeah.
Excellent. Dalia.
Yeah, I can kind of piggyback off of that. I feel like a lot of our points are overlapping, even if they don't seem like they are. My first bit of advice is come in with a clearer idea of what you do want to pursue. That first year goes by quick. And if you are, seeing all the consulting people recruiting for consulting and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do that, you will get distracted. And that's time that is really important for you to not waste if that is not something that you do want to pursue. With that in mind, when you're looking at opportunities, you would be surprised how many people will still grant you an interview, even if you do not fulfill all of the criteria for a role. So if you see a role that you're interested in, assuming you are here, use the CDO, ask them for their insight if you'd like, but also don't cut yourself short from an opportunity based on like not fitting the bill 100%.
Thank you, Dalia. Kalen, let's round it out with you. What's your gold nugget advice?
Well, I'll give two if that's okay.
Sure.
Awesome. So the first one I would say is kind of picking back off of what Balajee said. Definitely apply, but also feel like apply when you feel most ready. I think is just like given like we mentioned like round 2, round 3, and there's a question about like if there's a difference. But I would just say that like when you feel most prepared in your application and what you want to put forward as your experiences, whether it's professional, extracurricular, I let that also kind of be what ways on which rounds you go for, I think. And then for me, it was really intentional about for when I went for round 2, it's round 1, I wanted certain experiences that I had going on in the fall that I wanted to speak to. So that would be my first piece of advice. And then the second one I would say is be comfortable and be in your story as a Silver Scar. It's always going to be the most pivotal question that you'll have to navigate, whereas through interviews, and maybe more informally with peers. And I should say, like, your peers, like, who are, normally MBA students, I think there's really curious to learn more about you, and there's not any sense of like that you're being treated differently. You are fully a part of the class, and like, so embrace the unique stories you bring as silver scholars, I think. And just like be ready to kind of invest in that story, and as others mentioned, or as Alex mentioned specifically, do soul searching to understand why. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kalen, Alex, Balajee, Dalia today for sitting in our panel for the Silver Scholars panel. And hopefully everyone on our webinar today learned from our session and the student experiences. So with that, we'll end our session. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at another event.